So over the last little while, I've sort of gained a new appreciation for certain things in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, whether it be something like a little detail, such as classic Sonic's Green Hill Zone in Sonic Forces, taking inspiration from Splash Hill in terms of the soundtrack, or a game that I didn't know existed but had a blast playing through when I found it, like Sonic Triple Trouble. If you couldn't tell by the title, there's one game that I consider to be a bit of an underrated gem, so let's talk about it. Sonic Lost World, or as I like to lovingly call it, Super Sonic Galaxy 3 was released in 2013 for the Nintendo Wii U. And upon release, it didn't get anything overwhelmingly positive from what I remember, or anything too negative. It was just kind of meh, another game in the franchise. I remember some complaints about the gameplay, so what a coincidence, we're talking about gameplay in this video. I'll talk about story in another one, I don't know when, just whenever I feel motivated to. So, gameplay. Let's talk about the basics. Basically, the whole gist is that you get to the end of the level, and depending on what kind of level, you're either saving animals from a giant canister, or you're defeating a boss, and it kind of swaps every couple levels. Like, you'll have a basic level, then a boss level, then another normal one, then another boss one. And something else that kind of shifts between the two levels is the kind of format. The format will change with every level between fully 3D and mostly 2D. Especially when it comes to, like, bosses. You see it in Windy Hill. Zone 1 is mostly free roaming. In the second one, it's mostly 2D. In the third one, it's mostly free roaming. And in the fourth one, it starts off in free roam, or like 3D, but it transitions into 2D for the boss. And it's pretty cool. I actually like that. It's a nice little change. Everyone gets happy. If you like 2D, then you get it. You like 3D, then you also get it. It's fun. It's amazing how much they could, like, alter tiny things to make the same levels or same feeling levels different. I will admit I have gotten several of the quote-unquote cave levels confused with each other, but that's just me being an idiot, probably. So, we've talked about the main gist of the game. Let's talk about certain mechanics, starting off with the parkour mechanic, which was added specifically for this game. Basically, if you hold the run button, yes, there's a run button now, while basically grinding up against a wall, you can run up it, you can run across it, and I actually like this mechanic because they kind of roll with it. Sometimes it's mandatory to get through a stage, but other times it's a nice way to, like, hide a certain, like, a red ring in a cheeky spot that you could only get to with the parkour mechanic. You have to actively go out of your way to find this thing, or if you'd rather not go all the way back after collecting a red ring, you can use the parkour mechanic to continue through the level. It was implemented pretty nicely, and I always had a lot of fun just screwing around with it once I finally got it down, because I'll be honest, I didn't even know there was a run button, which leads us into two returning mechanics from the classic days that no one seems to talk about that they're in this game: the peel out and the spin dash. Let's talk about the peel out first, and we'll get into why me not knowing there was a run button is kind of important when we get to the spin dash. So, peel out. It's not exactly the most useful, but if you get caught in a bad cycle, you can charge it up and store your speed so you can just boost through as fast as you can. I always just kind of charged it up at the beginning of the stage because it made me feel cool, but it was a nice return from an old thing that everyone seemed to like from Sonic CD. especially just how it looks in animation. I always thought it was kind of cute. But yeah, the peel out is kind of the lesser of the two returning mechanics, but it is nice that they included it, considering now that there is a run button. It's mostly for cosmetics, but hey, it's cute. It's cute. I like it. Then there's the spin dash, and oh boy, I have a fun relationship with the spin dash. Like I said, I didn't know that there was a run button in the game, so for the longest time, I'm not kidding when I say the entire first world, I genuinely thought that the game was just really weird and didn't let you have a run feature. So what I did was I would spin dash to the end for all 4 of the first stages for the most part. And looking back, that's kind of funny how dumb I was. I found out about the run button by reading the manual. But back to the spin dash. Spin dash is fun as hell. First off, if you just crouch and then you just move, you get a cute little somersault. It's adorable. Charge up the spin dash, you go zooming, and then you can do this. That is what I consider to be the original drop dash, or as I guess would be more appropriate to call it now, the spin dash extend. Basically, how it works is that you kind of have 2 midair states, since there's the double jump in this game as returning from Sonic Colors. There's your first jump, in which you stay curled up into a ball, and then you double jump, which you uncurl from. If you only jump once, and you're still holding the spin dash button, and you land, your spin dash is recharged, and you could theoretically chain these together forever. That's actually how I was able to get through all the levels after, like, forever. And by all the levels, I mean all the levels in the first world. By the second world, I finally realized that there was a run button because I was struggling to spin dash my way through Desert Zone 1, which, that sounds like a really fun challenge run, just like, can you get through Sonic Lost World without the run button? Alright, next part about this very unscripted rambling about Sonic Lost World is the special stages, and I'm not talking about special stages in the sense that it's like a bonus stage at the end of the level or something like that. I'm talking about levels that kind of differ from the usual structure of the game. There are a couple of grinding levels, and while they are pretty common, I still consider those special stages, and they're actually a lot of fun. There's also a couple of max speed levels, or levels that have a max speed alternate path, such as I believe, Windy Hill Zone 1. Then there's the final boss with Eggman, and then there's the first Zaman boss in Desert Zone Act 2. Those are 3 notable max speed sections. Then we have they're just levels that change things outright. I already mentioned the grinding levels, but in the first Xena boss level in, what was it, Winter Force or something like that? But in the Winter Zone, Act 2, you're going through the entire stage as a snowball, and kind of the level design of the stage leads up to the third zone where you're inside of a casino because there's a whole bunch of 8 balls and stuff like that. But the point is, you're a giant snowball, you're running around, and you pick up rings, but you kind of cash all of them in by going through a goalpost, but if you get hit, then they disappear forever. At least I vaguely remember that's how it worked. And it was always really cool just collecting as many rings as you could. And while the snowball was a little unwieldy to control, it was still quite a lot of fun for me. I really liked that little change of pace. Also, the Wisps are back, which only add to a lot of the gameplay stated earlier. There's the Hover Wisp, there's the Crimson Eagle now, there's also a black hole you can turn into, and of course there's the bomb that I doubt anyone has actually managed to kill 3 enemies with. So, what about the bosses? Well, all the bosses kind of roll with whatever is the main mechanic of the world you're in, or just one of the game mechanics in general. With Zaz, it's pretty basic. You're just running after him, and you're just either homing attacking him or homing attacking him. It's kind of it. He kind of runs away most of the time, or if he does face you head on, you just gotta hit him when he's not trying to kill you. Then there's Zomom, and in your first bout, he's slowly destroying the stage, and when he stands still, that's when you homing attack him, but when you fight him the second time, he does this tornado attack, and at first you can jump over it, but eventually it becomes so big that you can't exactly jump over it, so what it incites you to do is to run up the wall using the parkour mechanic and jump over it that way, which I think is pretty neat. And from then on, the bosses are all kind of unique. Sometimes you have to chase them down, sometimes you're fighting them as a giant snowball, or blasting apple juice into their face, or fighting them Bowser style in a sense. Except for the final boss with Eggman, that one is pretty reminiscent of the Colors final boss, but I didn't mind too much because, well, it was still a fun boss, it was a cute little max speed section, and the song slapped just like the rest of the soundtrack. The soundtrack is really fucking nice, and like the title theme still gets stuck in my head. Desert Zone Act 2, Dragon Sky Road Act Zone 2, the final boss theme, the Deadly Six theme, it's all really, really cool. And I guess, speaking of music, there is one little thing we have to talk about, which is the zones that come after the game. They all kind of have their own unique mechanics that you have to play through, and kind of, I guess these are like things that they couldn't quite put into the game or just wanted to add as like a bonus thing. One such level, you are actually playing as Tails, or as you're actually controlling the tornado with Sonic standing on the roof, and you can hear the Sonic Adventure 2 version of Believe in Myself as an instrumental in the background of the level, and that's a cute touch. I liked that. When I first heard that, I started singing along. You could not stop me. It was a cute touch. Like, maybe it's just me being overly eccentric, or like, I guess being too much of a fan or something, I don't know, but I really do think that this game is a little bit underrated. Just as a quick summary, the spin dash is a lot of fun to mess around with, especially if you start chaining them together. The peel out was a nice little cosmetic touch to it. The run button and parkour mechanic allows for a lot of unique design choices in terms of the levels, which can make them feel less similar to one another than they would originally seem, especially if you're going on a hunt for all the red rings. Some of the completely different level changes, like playing as the giant snowball, or running through a bunch of honeycomb, or running through a world of sweets, those were all pretty nice, and while they might feel a bit too similar to Colors in some aspects, it still feels a lot like its own game to me. I never once thought of Colors until the final boss and with the Wisps, and even then, the Wisps are mostly optional in some of these stages, but they're also a lot of fun to mess around with, to find secrets and stuff. So overall, the game is just a blast in terms of gameplay. I would recommend giving it another chance, just learning the mechanics and all that, and see what you think of it. Not for everyone, because, you know, Sonic is kind of this race to the finish kind of thing, but I personally had fun. So yeah, that's enough of this unscripted rambling about Sonic Lost Worlds gameplay. If I ever get around to it, I'll talk about the story, which I personally think is actually more underrated than the gameplay. So until whenever, I can't make any promises. Peace out.